And the call comes in, and it's the usual crap. Broker nose in the shower kind of thing. So I cuff him, put him in the car, and away we go. Only that night, we're driving into town. Instead of left, I go right out into nowhere. And I kneel him down, and I put my revolver in his mouth. And he's crying, going to the bathroom all over himself, swearing to God he's going to leave her alone. And I told him to be quiet. And after a few minutes, I took the gun out of his mouth. And I say, so help me, if you ever touch her again, I will such and such and such and such.
Just a warning.
Of course. Just trying to do the right thing. But 2 weeks later, he killed her. Of course. The moral of the story is, I chose a half measure when I should have gone all the way.
Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. All great leaders since Moses have known that a feared enemy must be crushed completely. Sometimes they have learned this the hard way. If one ember is left alight, no matter how dimly it smolders, a fire will eventually break out. More is lost through stopping halfway than through total annihilation. The enemy will recover and will seek revenge. Crush him, not only in body but in spirit. Transgression of the law. No rivalry between leaders is more celebrated in Chinese history than the struggle between Yu Xiang and Liu Pang. Fan Tseng urged Shang to kill his rival before it was too late. He told the general to invite Liu to a banquet at their camp outside Liu's captured city, and in the midst of a celebratory sword dance to have his head cut off. The invitation was sent. Liu fell for the trap and came to the banquet, but Shang hesitated in ordering the sword dance, and by the time he gave the signal, Liu had sensed the trap and managed to escape. Realizing his mistake, Shang marched on the city, this time determined to hack off his rival's head. Liu was never one to fight when the odds were against him, and he abandoned the city. Liu was now Shang's bitter enemy, and he pursued him for many months. Finally, he cornered him in a walled city. Lacking food, his army in disarray, Liu sued for peace. Again Fan Tseng warned Shang, crush him now. If you let him go again, you will be sorry later. But Shang decided to be merciful. Fan proved right. Liu managed to use the negotiations for his surrender as a distraction, and he escaped with a small army. Shang, amazed that he had yet again let his rival slip away, once more set out after Liu. A few weeks later, in the thick of the hunt, Shang scattered his forces unwisely, and in a surprise attack, Liu was able to surround his main garrison. For the first time, the tables were turned. Now it was Shang who sued for peace. Liu signed a false treaty. He lured Shang into relaxing his defense, then ambushed and slaughtered almost all of his army. Shang and his men made a last stand against wave after wave of Liu's forces, until only Shang himself was left alive. Just then, Shang saw an old friend, Liu Matong, among Liu's soldiers, and he said to Liu, I heard that Liu Pang has placed the price of 1,000 gold and the fief of 10,000 households on my head. Take it then. Shang then committed suicide with his sword. Interpretation. Shang respected his rival and wanted to prove his superiority on the battlefield, even to force the clever Liu to surrender and serve him. Yet every time he had his rival in his hands, something made him hesitate, a fatal sympathy with, or respect for the man who after all had once been a friend and comrade in arms. Liu would not suffer the same hesitation once the tables were turned. This is the fate that faces all of us when we sympathize with our enemies, when pity or the hope of reconciliation makes us pull back from doing away with them. Power cannot be dealt with this way. Allow your enemies no options, annihilate them. It is not, of course, a question of murder, it is a question of banishment. Sufficiently weakened and then exiled from your world, your enemies are rendered harmless. They have no hope of recovering and hurting you, and if they cannot be banished, at least understand that they are plotting against you, and pay no heed to whatever friendliness they feign. Realize this. In your struggle for power, you will stir up rivalries and create enemies. There will be people you cannot win over, enemies you cannot turn into allies no matter what. These enemies you must crush completely. You cannot afford to go halfway. Negotiation is the insidious viper that will eat away at your victory. so give your enemies nothing to negotiate, no hope, no room to maneuver. If in your struggles with them you stop halfway, or even 3/4 of the way out of mercy or hope of reconciliation, you only make them more determined, more embittered, and they will someday take revenge. The solution is simple. Have no mercy, crush your enemies as totally as they would crush you.